Honorable Minister, Umama Lindiwe Zulu, UNICEF Country Rep, Umem Hinga, our partners from the movement globally, joining us online, Dr. Stephanie Barros, Deputy National Chairperson, Umama Nkosikazi Mhlauli, representative from the religious sector, Professor Reverend Jasi. We've got also representatives from our government departments who will also be participating here, members of the public and organizations that are partnering with us in fighting the killings and the abuse against children. Good morning. It is indeed a wonderful day, wonderful because we are continuing the conversation that we started with regard to the killings against children and the child abuse. We are saying, as a nation, kwanele is enough. We are saying we are coming together as a nation so that we can be able to coordinate our effort and fight for our children. The children of this country have got a right to life. They've got a right to be protected. And we really want to thank the leadership of our Minister Lindiwe Zulu, who continues to move from province to province across the country, doing dialogues, making dialogues, and fighting for the rights of the children. So this morning we have come together, ladies and gentlemen, to say that we really need to do something about this. We are tired. The kids are tired. The kids are crying. We are our hope. And we don't even know as to whether they see us as a hope, because we are the ones who are abusing the kids. The people who are supposed to be protecting the kids are the ones that are abusing them. Now we are coming as a nation to say, please, let's coordinate our efforts. Let's ensure that we continue the dialogue. Let us ensure that wherever we are, we have a conversation about this. We fight these killings about children. Most of the time, we focus more on violence against women, and we forget about the children who are most vulnerable. So we are saying today it's a national dialogue that we are holding to ensure that we continue the conversation that we are having, but not only continuing the conversation, but ensuring that we come up with targeted interventions that will ensure that we protect our children. So without any waste of time, I will get into the program. And maybe before I start, let me alert the public that we're going to have a very slight change in the program. We'll be having the minister who will be coming immediately after the representative from the SAPS. That's the only change that we are having now. So without any further ado, I will call upon Ms. Maga, to come and do the opening welcome and purpose of the day. Ms. Maga?
Good morning, everybody. Honorable Minister, distinguished guests, I thank you all, and I would like to say all protocol observed. My purpose, my reason to be here is to tell the purpose. While the world, including South Africa, is confronted with COVID-19 pandemic, South Africa battles the second pandemic of gender-based violence and femicide, where many children remain victims of different forms of abuse, including physical, sexual abuse, murder, rape, you name it. Every day we see it on TV, in the papers, about how our children are being abused, neglected, and exploited. Girls are physically and sexually assaulted at schools by the teachers, the very people we thought they will protect our children, classmates, or other individuals. But I want to say it's not all schools, all teachers that are abusing children. I want to highlight that. There are some that are the rotten potatoes. Now, fearing sexual assault, the girls often choose their safety to the detriment of their education. They prefer to be home and not going to school because the environment is not safe. Now, the country continues to witness violent crimes against children. Recent cases in some provinces reveal that the country is confronted with social behavioral problems. You know, we feel that violence go hand in hand with the behaviors of people our children are living with. And that requires collective effort. There's a saying that it takes all the village to raise the child. And also to provide comprehensive package of services to combat violence. It will be informed by the needs of the children. Now, it is against this backdrop of these child abuse incidents that today our Honorable Minister of Social Development, Mayor Lindiwe Zulu, sorry, with due respect, Mayor Lindiwe Zulu, in partnership with the United Nations Children's Fund, host a national roundtable webinar to discuss mainly the killings of children, the rape, the abuse, and to come with interventions, comprehensive interventions to address this. Now, as I said, it takes all the village to raise the child. There's no structure alone that can intervene in the lives of our children. We are calling upon our communities because it happens in the community. The community is our eyes and ears. Working with government and all stakeholders in the child protection system to commit and intensify efforts to prevent violence against children. We need every effort. We need everybody together to combat violence against children. Where violation of rights of children occurs, it must be reported to the law. We have the laws, we have structures that are meant to deal with violence. So we are appealing to say, report any case or suspicion of violence. You need not come out, but you can just report and we will protect you. As long as now we have given out where violence is, we will go and intervene. It's important I'm reading somewhere. It's important to note that this webinar also forms part of the National Human Rights Month. We all know that this month has been declared to observe the human rights, including the rights of the children. Also seeks to highlight and address the plight of children and their rights to protection. You know, there's a saying that children are our future, although some are saying now. It's now, and we strengthen the future. So this year, South Africa is observing the month under the theme, the Year of Charlotte Maxeke, promoting human rights in the age of COVID-19. Similar to all human rights, children's rights must always be defended, as enshrined in the Constitution of South Africa, Chapter 28, and also the UN Rights Convention. Lastly, I would say nationally, globally, regionally, we observe children's rights. So today, I wish you all a very fruitful engagement that will produce evidence-based solutions that will be recognized for us to render interventions for our children. Let us all unite and put hands together to put measures in place in making sure that we create safety nets, conducive nets for our children to eliminate violence. Halala children, you are our future. I thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Maha, for the welcoming speech. What I've picked up from what you said is that it is everybody's business, to protect children. That's what came out from what you said. I would love to introduce the panel, and we've got our minister, who is the one who's leading this panel, Minister Umama Lindiwe Zulu, from the Department of Social Development. We've got a UNICEF country rep, Umam Muhingana. We've got a representative from the Global Partnership Movement, from the who's joining from online. It's Dr. Stefanie Barros. We've got a Deputy National Chairperson who's here in the studio, Umama Nkosikazi Mhlauli. We also have a representative from the religious sector, Professor Reverend Jasi, who's also here with us in the studio. And we've got a representative from Children's Rights Commissioner, who is Professor Ntuli, who is also virtually. And we've got representative from the SAPS, Brigadier Strauss and Brigadier Vivian Pudumo. We've got the CEO from the World Vision, Bruce Lazel. And then we've got director from Teddy Bear Foundation, Dr. Oma. And we've got parents, because parents are the primary caregivers of children. A representative from parents is Ume Nongeba Mhlali, who is virtual. And we also have children, who will be talking, because it is their issue here. We need to hear from them. We need the voice of children. So we've got Unaledi Nkanyezi from the World Vision. We also have Londiwe Sibande. We've got Ulora Maleme. They are the ones who will be in the panel, who will say, what is it that is really affecting them? We need to listen to their cry, because it's them that are affected directly. I will make a slight change without any waste of time. I'll call Minister for Social Development, Umama Lindiwe Zulu, to come and give us a note address. Minister.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Thank you very much, Ms. Lumka Oliphant. Also, I came through with you here, and I really do wish to thank you, Lumka, and your team from a communications point of view, because it is through communication that we are able to have use this platform that is now available to us. We normally would have been in a hall somewhere, would have been with the children and the parents and everyone. But unfortunately, because of COVID-19, we have had to terribly downscale that. And I think that we need to get used to what we are doing here today. We need to get it into our system that this is the new way that we are going to be working. And so I wish to thank the team for having put up this platform and enable us to communicate not only to ourselves who are here, but to the children, and also give the children the opportunity, because my view is that we are here today not for ourselves. We are here today because we need to enable the children, give the platform also an opportunity to speak to us. So thank you, Program Director. But I also would like to thank UNICEF Country Representative, my sister Muhigana, because we are in partnership, and I can tell you all that since I started working in the department and since your arrival in South Africa, we have been working very well in a united and coordinated manner, not only on the issue that we are dealing with here today about the children, but on all other areas pertaining particularly to social ills that are facing South Africa. The Dean of the University of Venda, Dean Alunamutwe Ranzicheni, the Chairperson of the National House of Traditional Leaders, Inkosikazi Mhlawuli, and I also do want to indicate that with the traditional leaders, we think we must at all times try and hold each other's hands, because these are the people who are in the communities. These are the leaders who have to mobilize their own communities to help us fight the scourge of violence against women and children. But also I would like to say to you, we do need to have concrete programs that we can be held accountable for in the implementation. And I know that when we go to the House of Traditional Leaders, we talk a lot about what needs to be done, but we seem to have less on action. And so today I take this opportunity to thank you also for always being there, but also to request that let us have more action, more activities, especially in the traditional areas. Let us use that opportunity of the leadership there and the traditional efforts that are there, because traditions also are not necessarily static. Traditions must enable us to create a conducive environment, both for the women, but for everybody, but in particular, create a conducive environment for the children. The Director of Teddy Bear Foundation, Dr. Shahida Onmar, thank you very much also for being here. From the very beginning, when I came into the department, I became aware of the Teddy Bear Foundation and the work that you do. The CEO of World Vision South Africa, Mr. Bruce Lazel. And Mr. Bruce Lazel, may I say that we've worked with the World Vision for South Africa for a very long time. And actually, I can recall even at the time, during the time of the liberation struggle, World Vision was always there for us as people who were fighting for the democracy that we have today. And thank you very much for having continued to support us, because may I also take this opportunity at this platform to say that the building of democracy can never be a short term. 26 years plus minus of building of democracy is too short a time, and we continue to request the international and global organizations not to leave us alone and tell us that we are a developed country, we should be capable of dealing with all these issues. That's the reason why we have the United Nations and UNICEF and other UN bodies being there to assist us, because we still need you to help work with us in the creation of a new South Africa, in the building of a new South Africa. Representatives from SAPS, thank you very much for being here. This is also an opportunity to thank you for the work that you do, and to say to you, we are very much aware of the fact that there's a lot of work that you do as SAPS. Usually you are the first people to come to a situation where a child has been abused, a woman has been abused, a child has been killed, a woman has been killed. We really appreciate the work that you do, and we are saying to you, we know that many a times you come across situations where we are being attacked, saying that you are not doing the right thing, you are doing less than the work you are supposed to do. We know that amongst you, men and women in blue, there's a lot of work that you are doing, but we also want to work with you very closely at all times. And I work very close with the Minister Bheki Cele. We try by all means to make sure that we have a coordinated approach to the work that we do. Representatives from the religious sector, as represented by Archbishop Mbulelo Diasi, I wish to also say to you besides the word of God, besides the prayers that we do every morning when we wake up, for me it is about assisting our communities, change their mindset, change the attitude of our people, and to have a new mindset that must be assisted by yourselves as the churches and the religious community. It's not just feeding people with the word of God, which is a very important thing, but it's also about the behavioral change that we need to see amongst our people, and we work with the religious community very closely. But also I'd like to thank the panelists, child representatives here who are present, as well as the parents who are here. The message to the parents is that, parents, you are not alone in this fight against violence against women and children. You are not alone in the fight as far as the killing of our children are concerned. We will always be with you. But the message that I also want to send to you, parents, keep the pulse of knowing where your children are, what are they doing all the time. They must not be lost along the way and only to discover way later that you find that your child has not come back home, and it's only that time that you get up to worry about it. Worrying about our children, in particular in the violence, in the environment in South Africa, 24/7. We must be able to know where our children are. And if you go in particular, I'm saying this to the parents in the township in particular, last week we had a walk and we ended up in Deep Slot. And in Deep Slot, I could see that there are children to the ages of 5 and 4 and 6 who were out in the streets. And I was saying to the staff, the officials who were with me, it's painful for me to think this way. When I see the child walking alone, the first thing that comes to me is, how far will this child go before somebody intercepts the activities of the child? It's painful for us to be in that situation where, as parents, as government, and everybody cannot feel the freedom of our children in the township moving anywhere without thinking that somebody might end up just grabbing that child, and that child might be found in the gutter. To those that I was working with last week, I did indicate at the police station in Deep Slot that one of the things that we need to do is to make sure that the ears and the eyes must be the people who are walking up and down the street. We grew up in a situation where if in the township or in the village where you are and people can see you are still very young and you are moving alone, they would take advantage and say, hey, what are you doing here on the street? How come you're out here in the street? We are supposed to be at home. But of course, the responsibility of government and the people and the communities is to create a conducive environment where the children, if their parents are not there with them, the children have places of safety where they can go and play, places of safety where the children can share among themselves and assist each other. Now, this webinar is unfolding during the most crucial stage in our country, whereby citizens of our country are celebrating Human Rights Month since the beginning of the month under the theme, The Year of Charlotte Maxeke, Promoting Human Rights in the Age of COVID-19. Human rights cannot be complete as long as global trends replicate our country as a center of violence, rape, abduction, teenage pregnancy, gangsterism, and many forms of social ills and abuse encountered by our children on a daily basis. Child killings, rape, and child abuse cannot be taken lightly, as many children lose their lives and future during early stages in their lives, and this paints a bleak picture for us as a country. Nothing pains me than being a minister of social development responsible for the well-being of our people. Just the knowledge that our country is counted as among the top 5 or the top. We should work hard as a nation and as a people not to be known as a country that whose children suffer because they are being killed and whose women suffer because they are being killed. I'm saying for us as a country because there's an African expression that says, "Ngwana kisijo wahlakanelwa, which means a child belongs to all of us in society. It basically implies that parents, neighbors, teachers, and other key social partners, including law enforcement authorities such as the South African Police Services, have a collective responsibility to raise every child within their reach. The call for collective efforts is one of the main reasons why we decided to convene this webinar as a Department of Social Development. As a department, we have a role of building a caring society together. But reality is what defines us will remain a theory until we move a bit by partnering with other key stakeholders, including everyone who is here today. As I always say, social development is not about individual development, but it is for the development and social emancipation of our people, especially the poor and vulnerable children in need of care and guidance. We are hosting this webinar on children in collaboration with our key stakeholders in the child protection system so as to restore the pride and dignity of our nation. Given the magnitude and increased incidence of abuse, we should be worried as a collective not to fall into the trap of comfort. Meanwhile, our children are being victimized and abused. And of course, COVID-19 pandemic exposed the high levels of inequality, poverty, unemployment, and other social ills impacting on well-being of children. As a result, families wherein children also reside were hard hit by the socio-economic conditions ranging from gender-based violence and femicide incidences, substance abuse, as well as job losses. Children and families who are already vulnerable due to socio-economic exclusion or those living in crowded settings become more vulnerable due to the manifestation of physical and emotional abuse, neglect, death of family members. Most concerning is when children die and are hurt at the hands of people they trust most, as such as their parents, caregivers, and family members. And what is more disgusting is when they lose their lives for ritual purposes. This is an indication that something is completely wrong with our society, as we are often unable to take care and protect our children. The recent heinous crime, which almost shocked the country, as South Africa marked 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children last year, is when a 34-year-old father attacked and killed a 42-year-old mother and her 5 children with an axe in Swaimani in KwaZulu-Natal province. This is but just one incident out of many other incidences that have happened. Although the last financial cycle 2019-2020 annual crime stats presented by SAPS revealed that child murder dropped by 7%, meanwhile, 943 children were murdered and more than 24,000 were sexually assaulted in South Africa. This basically states that we are an angry and wounded society which need urgent intervention, by failing which we may soon become one of the countries which one has a rich history and resilient people who during the course of this time failed to realize how blessed we are. This requires concerted efforts from all sectors of society to reflect and introspect on what we are not doing right in the course of prevention. And my view is that we need to do everything we can. Prevention is better than cure. When we talk about the police having to go to these spots, we now call them hotspots, and because of COVID-19, while COVID-19 was a negative effect, had a negative effect, but there's the other impact that enabled us, for instance, to identify the hotspots and zoom into the hotspots and deal with the problems that we are facing. I am hoping that today, as this webinar continues, we are also going to enable the children to speak for themselves. Because most of the time, we are the ones that are talking all the time and we have less of the children. I am saying, kwanele, but more than anything I'm saying is that nothing about them without them. It is the children that need to speak. Their involvement is about building a future yesterday, today, and tomorrow, because we talk about building the future, but the future cannot be built only by what is happening today. The future can be built by what happened yesterday, what is happening now, and what is happening in the future. I strongly believe that through this dialogue, we will hold hands, working together to care and protect our children from any forms of violence and physical harm. It is in our hands to bring the change we desire in our children's lives, our families, and communities at large. I wish that this webinar goes on very successfully. I unfortunately had to come in much earlier because I've got a National Executive Committee meeting which I need to connect to. So I will apologize that at some point I will quickly sneak out, but I'll sit as much as I possibly can. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you very much. Kwanele, kwanele. Enough is enough. Thank you, Minister, for encouraging us to ensure that we hear the voice of the children. Nothing about them without them. Thank you, Minister, for reminding us that it is all our responsibility to ensure that we create an enabling environment that will protect our children. Thank you very much. We hope it's not going to be just a conversation, but it's a conversation with actions. The plan of action that we have come up with, we have to implement it. And Minister will hold us accountable with regard to that. Thank you very much. We go back to our program. We've got a representative from SAPS. We've got a representative panel. We've got representative from SAP who will tell us about roles of SAPS in the investigations of crimes against children for successful prosecutions. We've got Brigadier Vivian Pudumo, who is virtual, and will be followed by also Brigadier Strauss, who's also virtual. Thank you.
Zulu. Good morning to everyone who is present in our midst. As the program director has mentioned, I'm Brigadier Pudumo, the section head of FCS investigation, family violence, child protection, and sexual offenses. This component is within the division of the detective service in the South African Police Service. And it was fully re-established in 2010 in all 9 provinces. So in all 9 provinces, we have 185 FCS units that are serving all the police stations in our country. There's no police station that doesn't have any member of FCS when a case of child abuse or a rape is reported at a police station that cannot be attended to. Within this component of the FCS unit, we are actually mandated to investigate crimes against women and children. And it consists of 3 sections. The first section is a section of FCS investigation, which consists of a team of a detective, dedicated trained detective that are responsible to investigate all FCS related crimes. And on daily basis, Minister, we are having the detectives that are placed on standby 24/7. When a case is reported at the police station, the police station will immediately contact the member on standby, and the member will go out immediately and attend to that case. And as we all know, we also have the 6 ministerial 6-point plan, ministerial plan in all the police stations in our country, where we are not expecting that whoever wants to report any crime against the child must be returned back. So our detectives are there 24/7 to attend to those cases immediately as they get reported. And remember, most importantly, when it comes to a case of a sexual offenses, it is very important that we ensure that we don't lose the evidence, since our victim self is our crime scene. So we need to make sure that we collect that evidence as soon as possible by taking our victim to the medical examination. And we also, most of the time, encourage people to report this kind of cases within 72 hours. As the incident gets reported to anyone, it is very important that that case gets to the police station and reported so that we don't lose evidence. And I must also mention that in a case of a young child who could not give a statement at the moment when the case gets reported, or a case where the child is unable to disclose to the investigating officer as to what happened, we do refer those cases to our forensic social worker to assist us in assessment of the child so that we can get a statement from the child and ensure that we are having a proper statement, a detailed statement that will be able to present before the court of law. And at the end of the day, we secure a successful conviction. The second section in the FCS environment is the section that deals with the serial rapist and the child pornography. This section is called the serial and electronic crime investigation. So they are specializing on cases that we picked up that there is a series of serial offender and those cases of the online child exploitation. This is what they are responsible for. And thirdly, within the FCS environment, we have the forensic social workers that I have already mentioned, that when we are encouraging difficulties in obtaining a statement from a child, then we get them involved to assist us to make sure that this case is properly investigated and will end up in having a successful conviction. And Brigadier Strauss is also here that will elaborate more as to what is their role as our forensic social worker in terms of assisting the team of the detectives that deals with the FCS related crimes, Minister. And I must say that this FCS environment, since it was established, we have a very good, successful prosecution, where we even have people that has been sent for life imprisonment in prison. So we really, really ask our community out there that whenever a case or a suspicion, as our program director earlier on indicated, if you suspect that the child has been sexually abused or neglected or what, report that to the police station immediately. There is a team within the South African Police Service that is being assigned to deal with those cases, and they are highly trained to deal with those cases. Thank you. I'll hand over to my colleague, Brigadier Strauss, to elaborate more on their roles as the forensic social work within our component. Thank you, Minister. Over to you, Brigadier Strauss.
Thank you. Good morning, Honourable Ministers and Program Director and colleagues, all protocol observed. I'm Brigadier Strauss, Section Head of Forensic Social Work in the SAPS. Now, forensic social work is a specialized field in social work practice that is characterized by the social worker's primary function of providing expert testimony in court. So what is a forensic assessment? What we do is it's a forensic interview where we interview the child using age-appropriate techniques to obtain uncontaminated data from the child. We also then compile an expert report and obtain a statement from the child. We then testify as an expert witness in court. When do we get involved? We get involved when there's a case registered, a criminal case is registered, and the investigating officer struggle to obtain information from a child, especially children between 2 and 10 years old. These children then gets referred to the forensic social worker, where we then implement a forensic assessment. So an assessment, the forensic interview, consists out of 4 to 6 sessions with the child, where we will then determine the cognitive developmental stage of the child, attachments that the child have with different people in the child's life, also school functioning and overall functioning. So we do a blind assessment. We don't have any information beforehand so that we can act as an impartial scientist and to provide expert testimony where we were totally impartial. So we assist the FCS members in obtaining statements from the children, and especially in cases where they cannot communicate effectively with the child. We then compile the scientifically based court report and deliver expert testimony in criminal court cases. So when we do testify, the court call us on cases, on things like where the child was inconsistent. Maybe there wasn't a detailed statement. Later on, the child disclosed more information, or there's inconsistencies. Then we go to court to explain the inconsistencies. We also testified on whether the child was sexually abused, on the late reporting, minimizing, because remember, at first the child will deny that she was sexually abused, or he. And then later on, the child will provide some information, but will minimize the disclosure. So she will say, it only happened once. He only touches me. So we need to see the child more than once. And then in the end, we get much more detail that was originally in the statement. So then we can testify on that. Why? Because of the process of disclosure, I got more information because I saw the child 4 to 6 sessions, whether I only got 1 session with the child. Okay, so we also, topics that we testify on is attachment, recantation of the disclosure. Remember, children can make an active disclosure, give all the detail with regards to the sexual abuse, and then the next session or in court, the child might recant and say that, no, it never happened. I was only lying or I was joking. This is part of the process of disclosure. It's not that the child is inconsistent or lie, so we can explain that. We also explain child development stages, truthfulness, memory, suggestibility, and then the process of disclosure, the dynamics of sexual abuse. There's a lot of dynamics of sexual abuse. It's not straightforward that the child will tell what happened and then it ends. This child will recant, or the child will minimize. Then in court, the child might give more detail and the court will feel, but this child is inconsistent or the child is lying. So this is where we come in, is to testify as an expert and explain to the court the dynamics of sexual abuse and the process of disclosure. Or where the child is not able to testify, we will then put in a statement on that, request for the court to postpone the case until the child is ready to testify. We also can testify on the impact of the abuse on the child. Okay, that is in short what we do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, SAPS, very important stakeholders in ensuring that the perpetrator is being prosecuted. Without any further ado, I will request a representative from UNICEF. We've got a country rep, Ms. Muhigana. We need to hear about the global perspective because we are part of the global world. So we have our rep from UNICEF, a country rep, as I've already said, Ms. Muhigana. The stage is yours. Thank you very much.
Honorable Minister Lindiwe Zulu, dear partners, dear parents, dear children listening to us today, dear friends from the media. As was said before me today, we must tackle violence against children through accelerated prevention and early intervention services, through on-the-ground community dialogue. We can link global data with local realities to find solutions and to urgently respond to end the scourge of violence against children. I would like to bring to you some reflections from a report called Global Status Report on Preventing Violence Against Children, which was published in 2020. Honorable Minister, half of the world's children, or approximately 1 billion children each year, are affected by physical, sexual, or psychosocial violence. They're suffering injuries, disabilities, and death. This figure is drawn from a first-of-its-kind report, the Global Status Report on Preventing Violence Against Children 2020, which charted the progress of 155 countries against the INSPIRE framework, which is a set of 7 strategies for preventing and responding to violence against children. This global report was published in October last year and signals a clear need in all countries to scale up efforts to implement the 7 strategies for preventing and responding to violence against children. While nearly all countries, that's 88% of them, they have key laws in place to protect children against violence, less than half of the countries, that's 47%, have evaluated and said that they were they're capable of strongly implementing their laws. In addition, Honorable Minister, the report includes the first ever global homicide estimates specifically for children under 18 years of age. And it finds that in 2017, around 40,000 children were victims of homicide. Although a majority of countries, that's 83%, have national data on violence against children, only 21% use these data to set baseline and national targets to prevent and respond to violence against children. About 80% of countries in the world have national plans of action and policies, but only 1/5 have plans that are fully funded and have measurable targets. A lack of funding combined with inadequate professional capacity are likely contributing factors and a reason why implementation has been slow. South Africa, as part of the global community, has taken bold steps in committing to the Global Partnership to End Violence. The Global Partnership and its fund were launched in July 2016, and South Africa joined the partnership in 2017. The Global Partnership is the global entity focused solely on Sustainable Development Goal 16.2, which aims to end all forms of violence against children by 2030. Additionally, dear partners, Honorable Minister, dear parents, Dear children, with the growing pace of digital technologies in our and our children's lives, the We Protect Global Violence is another entity which is focusing on protecting children online and addressing the digital risks that face children. As we face technology, we must remain vigilant to the ways in which it can expose children to harm. The COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated the situation and the plight of children in the face of violence, exploitation, and abuse. And protecting them is one of 6 points of UNICEF's urgent global agenda for action to prevent the COVID-19 crisis from becoming a child rights crisis. Around the world, spikes in calls to helplines for child abuse and intimate partner violence have been witnessed at an alarming rate, and this is true too of South Africa, where Childline has recorded an increase of 36% in calls over the lockdown period. So, Honourable Minister, dear partners, parents, children, friends from the media, what can we do? What must we do? We need to invest in children. We need to meet the many facets of their rights, to end their violence against them, and ensure that every child around the world and in South Africa can grow in a nurturing and protective environment to live a healthy, a safe, and prosperous life. And this is something that we must do. This is the best thing that we can do together. We need to scale up investments in prevention, accelerated prevention, and early intervention services as an urgent priority. Such investments would strengthen the capacity of families to take care of their children, while creating a nurturing and protective environment in the communities and providing spaces, forums for collaboration with our friends from the religious and faith-based organizations. We must strengthen the capacity of social welfare workforce and the capacity of civil society organizations such as Childline. Intensified coordination between the state and civil society is a vital step towards ending violence against children. Honourable Minister, we must monitor the well-being of children through real-time efforts. We need to know, as you were saying earlier, at every point in time, at every moment, where our children are and what is happening to them, so that if we identify signals of distress, we support households in addressing them in a timely manner. We must strengthen the statutory child protection system when children are hurt or are found to be in contravention of the law. As we move to a virtual mode of work, learning and socializing, it will be important to sensitize all children and their caregivers on how to keep children safe when they are online. And we must support the children who, in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, may be temporarily separated from their parents due to illness, as well as those deprived of their liberty, and work together to support young people seeking access to psychosocial support and mental health solutions. In concluding, Honourable Minister, allow me to quote Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, the WHO Director General, who said, "There is never any excuse for violence against children. We have evidence-based tools to prevent it, which we urge all countries to implement. Protecting the health and well-being of children is central to protecting our collective health and well-being now and in the future. I thank you.
It's quite scary to hear about the figures. 1 billion children each year exposed to violence and abuse. Very much scary. The 40,000 being victims of femicide. I think we really need to do something, as a globe, not as a country. It looks like it's an international phenomenon. And therefore, it's very much important that we coordinate our efforts, as Minister has already said. We've got limited resources, and currently with the impact of COVID-19, the purse has shrinked. And it's very much important that we should coordinate our efforts, being it business, being it private, being it, government, everybody, whatever we are having, religious sector, every relevant sector, all of us, we've got something to offer. So thank you very much for also reminding us that we need to emphasize and strengthen our monitoring, especially, we need to know where our children are. Minister is about to leave. I think we will release our minister because she has another prior commitment. Minister, thank you very much, for availing yourself within your constraint time. We know very much that you are very passionate about children and women. Thank you very much. As we move with the program, we're now going to call upon Reverend Dr. Randy Jeni, who is virtual, just to talk about the key findings and recommendations on the research that has been conducted on ritual killings. Dr. Randy Jeni.
Thank you very much. Am I audible? Am I audible? Am I audible? Okay, thank you so much. Good morning, everybody who is there. I will be sharing with you about my research study titled An Investigation into Ritual Murders in the Mbembe district of the Limpopo province, South Africa. What led me to do this research was the increasing number of people who were missing and found to be ritually murdered in some villages within the Mbembe district. Some of the victims were breadwinners, and the majority of victims were women and children. I had this perception that ritual murders were a thing practiced by the Mavenda people of South Africa. But after reading a lot of literature, I have come to accept that I had very little knowledge on the subject. I have come to realize that ritual murders are a global phenomenon. Although it is reported in much of the literature that ritual murders are unacceptable in many societies of the world, these practices remain a global problem that is practiced by many nations in the world in one way or another. People are ritually murdered every day for various reasons. The Mbembe district in the Limpopo province is one of the places reported to have a high incidence of ritual murders. The high incidence of ritual murders is occurring despite the provision of the Constitution of South Africa, which advocates for the right to life. Apart from the Constitution, the perpetrators of ritual murders, if identified, face negative repercussions, such as being arrested by the police, their houses being burned, or even banished from the village. In my research findings, I have discovered that there are 5 categories of people involved in the ritual killings. I must indicate from the beginning that this does not suggest in any way that everybody who falls in each category is a ritual murderer. But of course, the perpetrators of these heinous murders belong to each category that I will mention now. Number 1, we have the traditional leaders, 2 traditional healers, 3 business people, 4 religious leaders, and 5 politicians. I must indicate that it is not easy to determine the exact number of people who are ritually murdered due to the complexity of confirming and registering ritual murder deaths. Crime statistics in South Africa only record ritual murders within the general category of murder, making it difficult to determine the extent of such crimes. The other challenge regarding having an exact number of people are ritually murdered is that many mysterious deaths are not well investigated, thus masking the real cause of death, and some ritual murders are regarded as inquest murder because these cases are still investigated. The Limpopo province has a high record of ritual murder-related crimes. It is documented that the Vembe district has become the epicenter for ritual murders. However, few people have been arrested for such crimes, but the majority of perpetrators were not due to a lack of evidence. In 2015, the year I graduated with my PhD, there were 117 cases of ritual murders. After 20 years of democracy, now the number could be higher as we are now in the year 2021. That victims of ritual murders, among them we have the children, especially young girls, women, especially pregnant women, elderly people, and people who cannot defend themselves, including people living with albinism. And then the motives for ritual murders in the Vembe district, I categorize them after collecting the data and analyzing them. Then I realized that there is this, what we call power and authority, where traditional leadership strengthen their powers over their subjects, religious leaders over their church members, politicians over the voters. And then there is also what we call supernatural power leaders, where things like increasing support or membership, either from the politicians or church members or traditional leaders, attracting many people to visit their specific churches, or increased votes for politicians. Then there is also what I call attracting wealth, where religious leaders, politicians, and business people need more money or increase crop production or selling human body parts. We also have this, what we call the cultural practices. Before the installation of a chief or a king, or requirement for a successful traditional circumcision school, or to appease the ancestors for restoration of peace in the land. There is let me jump with these other things and come to the use of the organs. The modes of conducting ritual murders. In most cases, women and children are maimed and raped before they are ritually murdered. In some cases, victims are taken to the forest and butchered by their assailants, who in turn remove vital parts needed for money-spinning rituals. Organs are severed while the victim's body is still warm. The victim must be alive when body parts are cut off from his or her body and must feel more pain. And that is where the assailants say this thing will be working because this person is really fighting for his or her life. Human body tissues such as the tongue, eyes, ears, face, heart, liver, skin, and the tooth are most needed by these perpetrators. Let me also indicate that there are general use of human body parts. For example, human blood. Human blood is regarded as the costliest of all things mankind can possess. Some ritual murderers drink human blood to dispel fear and to protect entire families from witches. And then they also use the skull. Their skull is buried in the yards or foundations of certain businesses or churchyards. Skull is regarded as a medicine to increase crops and animals for all community members. When tribes are at loggerheads with each other, the skull of the enemy is buried with the belief that it would turn against its people and side with the perpetrators to haunt the enemies. Then there is this, the knee bones. The knee bones are mainly used by business people, religious people, and politicians in the belief that they are very strong items to make business flourish. As people use the knee bones to run, the belief is that the knee bones would make customers come running in support of their businesses, to support religious leaders with more church members, to help politicians win elections easily. The knee bone is crushed into powder and mixed with some herbs and water and sprinkled inside the building or a churchyard or where the voting would take place. Then there is this, the elbow bone. Similarly, the elbow bone is also used for defense. One reason to use an elbow bone is the belief that like a good soldier in the struggle against opponents, an elbow bone is used against other businesses around it and flourishes religious leaders, politicians, and makes business people, people's opponents lose the support of their customers. Then there is this, the hand. The hand is meant to call customers not only for business, but also for religious and political reasons. The human fats are extracted from the thighs and kidneys, are believed to give power and strength to traditional leaders, religious leaders, and politicians, as well as the sports people. Let me also talk about the breast. Breast brings good luck in various forms. They are considered to be a source of mother luck and a symbol of love. Let me jump to the recommendations. The recommendations are as follows. The perpetrators or all accomplices involved in ritual murder cases tried in the court of law should be equally sentenced as they took part in ending the life. Number 2, to develop laws and policies to protect both female and male children from harmful cultural attitudes and practices following the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child and the African Charter on the Rights of and Welfare of the Child. A screening machine that will detect the last person seen with the victim of ritual murder and which will see the weapons or equipment used. A screening machine which its detectors can be inserted into the ears of the ritually murdered victim to determine the last voices heard. All traditional leaders and religious leaders should be registered, and any traditional healer or religious leader who practices in any form without being registered should be arrested henceforth to reduce ritual murders. A partnership with various faith-based organizations should be encouraged, wherein religious leaders can work together towards the reduction of ritual murders. All stakeholders from different communities should be engaged in the deliberations during training workshops to solicit solutions in reducing ritual murders. More awareness campaigns to be launched to educate communities on the importance of life as opposed to the belief system that encourages the use of human body parts extracted during the process of ritual murder. The SAPs to engage police officials from other provinces to deal with ritual murder cases. Families that are deeply affected by the ritual murders should be allowed to stay their cases, just like those who were allowed to stay their cases during the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. A further study on the impact of ritual murders, I think it is needed urgently. Electricity is needed in the most rural areas because some of the people are caught up when they go for wood in the mountains. Water taps should be installed in every household to avoid incidences where women and children could be caught drawing water from the well. Communities should be restrained from attacking people that they suspect or burning their properties, as this will hinder or destroy the evidences that can be used in the future. This is just in a nutshell, and I thank you so much.
Dr. Randy Cheney, very much scary. This is a very important piece of presentation today. I'm not saying all others are not, but I think it's important for us to know what we are dealing with. And I'm happy that you mentioned the fact that there should be awareness. And even earlier, Minister talked about prevention. And we can only prevent this if we intensify our campaigns. The findings that you have come up with should not be locked in somewhere, but people must know about it. The right target group must know about it. The people in the community must know about it. So I'm very glad that, this information came up, but also upset, about the status, what is happening, with our children and with our women and with our pregnant women. Thank you very much for shedding the light. Maybe before I get into the next item, let me introduce Mr. Bruce Lazel, who has just joined us in the studio. Mr. Bruce, you are welcome. We will play a video, and as we play a video, after the video, that video will be ushering our next speaker, Ms. Stephanie Barros, who is a representative from the Global Partnership Movement to End Violence Against Children from the World Health Organization. He's going to talk about the role of governments in preventing violence against children and to accelerate action to end violence. The video, and then Mr. Barros, Ms. Barros, I'm sorry, Ms. Barros.
Children deserve the opportunity to thrive, to grow up in safe, nurturing relationships and environments. But 1 billion children are affected by violence every year. This is a terrifying and desperate situation for them, and it's also an urgent public health problem. But no matter what the political or economic situation, violence against children can be prevented. The cost of not acting is huge. Failure to act against violence undermines many other investments in children, including in their health and education, often causing lifelong damage to individuals, families, and communities in countless ways, exacerbating problems of mental health, school dropout, alcohol and drug abuse, exposure to HIV and AIDS, and many more risks. Most tragically, it raises the risk of further perpetration of violence against the next generation of children in a vicious and destructive cycle. Who's responsible for acting? Well, governments play a key role in preventing violence and safeguarding children. One of the most important functions of any government is to make homes, communities, and schools into positive, caring places, and to ensure that families have the means to protect their children. But it's challenging for governments, which are often pulled in many directions by a huge range of different stakeholders and concerned citizens. The INSPIRE framework can help. It's a set of 7 strategies that governments can use to prevent and respond to violence against children. Evidence already shows that well-designed programs using the Inspire framework have reduced violence by 20 to 50%. The 2020 Global Status Report on Ending Violence Against Children maps progress in implementing the Inspire framework in 155 countries. It provides a baseline to help governments monitor their progress towards ending violence. Although governments around the world support the Inspire strategies, the report shows that far more work is needed to end violence against children. Why? Well, for example, 83% of countries have the survey data they need to protect children, but only 21% are using it to set the right prevention baselines and targets. 80% of countries have a national action plan to prevent violence against children, but only 20% of them are fully funded. And although the laws that protect children from violence are enacted all around the world, they're poorly enforced. Inspire can help. It's urgent that governments use Inspire to do a number of simple things. Develop a national action plan to reduce violence against children and make sure it has precise targets for reductions in violence. Appoint an agency to coordinate multi-sectoral action and give it the resources it needs to do its job properly. Increase funding for evidence-based approaches to ending violence against children. Use the technical guidance in the Inspire package to scale up and increase the reach of the programs. And finally, enact and enforce laws to ensure the absolute prohibition of all forms of violence against children in all settings. To reach the SDG 16 targets of protecting children from abuse, exploitation, trafficking and violence, we need to accelerate progress significantly. Inspire can help. This report can help.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about that delay. It was impossible to unmute myself for a little bit of time there. Honorable Minister and other esteemed guests, it is indeed an honor to be part of these conversations with you today. My name is Stephanie Burrows and I'm from the World Health Organization. I work in their headquarters in Geneva, Switzerland, with the violence prevention team. And as mentioned by a previous UNICEF colleague, the Global Status Report on Preventing Violence Against Children was published in 2020, and it assesses countries' violence prevention status against the evidence-based Inspire strategies, the 7 strategies for ending violence against children. And in doing so, it charts countries' progress against the Sustainable Development Goals aimed at ending violence against children. And South Africa was one of the 155 countries that participated in the survey, and a country profile page is contained in the Global Status Report, which details all the findings for South Africa resulting from that survey. And a review of this country profile page is a good starting point for a discussion regarding the main achievements, gaps, and priorities for violence prevention action in the country. And it is hoped that countries will use the findings of the Global Status Report as the basis for discussion to look at where progress has been made, where there might be gaps, and what the priorities are in the future. And in addition to, and one of the national policy dialogues can help countries do this. And the national policy dialogues are also feed into the Together to End Violence Solution Summit series. So what is the Solution Summit series? In 2018, there was a Solution Summit in Stockholm, Sweden, which brought together government officials and other relevant stakeholders to showcase examples of programs that were working around the world to prevent and end violence against children. There should have been another Solution Summit last year, but of course with COVID, this wasn't possible. So instead, the End Violence Partnership has conceived of an 18-month global campaign which incorporates a virtual Solution Summit series, which will conclude with a leaders event at the end of this year. And the goal of this Solution Summit series is really to elevate the issue of violence against children to be a global priority and to catalyze the political and financial commitments needed to end violence against children in all settings. The government-run national policy dialogues are a critical part of the Solution Summit series. And in addition, there are affiliate events such as webinars, media events or videos that are being produced at local, national, and regional levels around the world by various relevant stakeholders to really build momentum and showcase solutions. But now just a bit more information about the policy dialogues themselves. There are two main goals that we are hoping to achieve through these policy dialogues. And the first really is to reach consensus among national stakeholders on key areas of progress, the main gaps, and the priorities in scaling up the evidence-based strategies to end violence against children, based on the findings of the Global Status Report. And it is hoped that a short report would emerge from these discussions that firstly highlight the priorities that have emerged out of the review of the Global Status Report. Secondly, the key actions needed to scale up priority programs in line with national action plans and INSPIRE. And thirdly, an indication of the sectorial body or bodies that will take forward the implementation of these priorities. The second goal of the policy dialogues is to contribute to a brief pathfinding statement of a maximum of 750 words. And this would summarize key national achievements towards ending violence against children since becoming a pathfinder country, and also to set out any new political or financial commitments. The intention is this statement would be signed off at a ministerial level and included as an official government submission to the Solution Summit series, and it would also figure prominently on the Solution Summit series website. And it's really important that such a statement would be submitted by the deadline of August so that it can be fed into the leaders event in December this year. That's it for me, and I'd like to now hand back to the moderator, and I'm extremely interested in hearing the future discussions and the inputs that are coming now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's very much important, to understand what is happening globally, how do we fit, as South Africa, and, to let the public also know that South Africa also participate, in the global activities. So we are very grateful that today we understand and the issue of what is it that is expected from us. It's very much important for us to ensure that we bring resources, that will be used to protect our children. Without any further ado, I will call our Nkosikazi Mhlauli, who is going to tell us about the role of the traditional leaders in the care and protection of children. Nkosikazi is the Deputy Chairperson of the National House Traditional Leaders. Thank you, ma'am.
Enkosi Mbhexeshi wenkqubo. Program Director. Apologies. Bambekile ke. Tshwarekile somewhere. Thank you very much, Program Director. As I was introduced, I am Nkosikazi Mhlauli. Some don't understand when you are talking about traditional leaders. They confuse us with traditional healers, dingaka amagqirha. Here I'm representing the chiefs, let me say so, amakhosi from South Africa. Umphathiswa umama uLindiwe Zulu esanduphuma phakathi kwethu. The panelists, Reverend Bishop Jasi, council representative, all the panelists, parents, abantwana bethu. I see other professors there, our partners who are joining us here, abemveli. They are joining us here virtually. Program Director, I must first apologize to the country and to our children. As from the report where the first culprits were mentioned here. Sicela uxolo bantwana bam. Sicela uxolo singisiza inkosi. We are apologizing to you as a country of what has happened, what we have done to you. As also as abazali, we didn't do what we were supposed to do to protect you. I'm here just to indicate on what we are doing as a Bukhosi, as you don't, some of you don't understand really the role of traditional leadership. We are there at local level, that is local House of Traditional Leaders, provincial level, provincial houses, also national houses, National House of Traditional Leaders, which is led by Kosi Mahlangu Nzunza. Our role and mandate from the Constitution, we are responsible for restoration of culture, customs, and also preservation of culture and customs and our values. So, as we are the custodians, it doesn't mean that this belongs to us as Amakhosi. Culture belongs to the communities and the families. So, whatever is going wrong in our culture, it is done by us as communities. Yes, Amakhosi as custodians, they are there to guide and advise. In doing that, we really appreciate the work we are doing with this Department of Social Development. We have a lot of programs, but losing our culture to assist in the protection of children and the other vulnerable groups. I'll talk to children mostly. As you always see us having Inqiyo, Umkhosi wemihlanga, those are platforms for education, for information, for capacitation of children, and the rite of passage, and what they must know, and what is expected of them, and we share information we get from these platforms. But when talking on those cultural practices, sometimes you notice that We are only focusing on girls, not on boys. We are trying to correct that with the men's sector. Under Ulaluko, it is not only the medical side, that is circumcision. We are talking about initiation, where there are supposed to be lessons there done by Amakankata. That includes being a responsible citizen. We are looking at that. That should be a part of our curriculum as traditional leaders. We have got Imbeleko as our cultural practice. That also deals with the sense of belonging of a child to the family, so that the child can be protected by the entire family. Coming to family structures, yes, we have noticed that now. The family units are no more there. It's just a wife and husband and their children. There are no more extended families. But we do encourage that. Let's encourage a revival of family units. And we encourage that children must be encouraged to know their extended families, because sometimes when the father and the mother is not there, they don't know where to go because they only know their parents only. We also assist in the registration of births, because we want children to access the services of the government. Working together with the religious sector, we had Imbizo in 2018. The resolutions of that Imbizo were that Amakhosi, traditional leaders and the religious sector must go and review those practices which are harmful to both women and children. We are doing that as a House of Traditional Leaders through our committee, which is Traditional Culture and Customs at national, provincial, and local. On the other side, we are working together with social development and also with men's sector. We have launched the Men's Parliament in the purpose of dealing with gender-based violence and femicide. We have committed ourselves as traditional leaders and religious sector that those sectors, those parliament, men's parliaments and also the boys' assemblies would be launched in all 882 tribal authorities to deal with these issues, because we need the boys also to know what is expected of them, as we have been neglecting them. Talking about the sense of belonging, especially for children, there are also, we have got values that talk to umntwana wam ngowakho, umfazi uzalela omnye. We are really emphasizing that. The traditional leaders have gone through some training. UNICEF, thank you very much. We are part of the training which opened eyes that there is no safe place here in South Africa. We tried by all means, when the list was there, churches said, no, the churches are safe. Tribal authorities, no, the tribal authorities are safe. We noticed that there is not a single safe place here in South Africa which is safe for children, especially in rural areas. In fact, all over South Africa, because when you go even to those centers where children are kept, they are not safe. We had a lot of dialogues. We have also launched a program called Uchomi with this Department of Social Development, which opens a place for discussions between children and parents. And that program director has been given to us as mothers, that is the wives of traditional leaders, starting from the queen mothers and going down. Here, a program director, as I was talking about broken families, when the traditional leaders were looking at this issue of broken families, we said, we have noticed that mothers, single mothers in fact, they don't allow the access by fathers to their children. Others because of anger, and that came out of the dialogue when we had the dialogue at Nyanden with boys, telling us that mothers are angry, saying that I'm not going to tell your father because your father didn't even buy a 12,5. That is the anger from the mothers. We appeal to mothers to allow the fathers to have access to their children. Working with UNACCOMPANIED Ime, we said, let's, in fact, when working with SANAC, as we are participating in SANAC, Amakosi decided to deal with Goal 4 and Goal 6. Goal 4 deals with structural drivers of HIV and AIDS. And those are those social issues we are talking about now, including child marriages, ukutwala. I need to clarify something here when we are talking about ukutwala kusubedisa. Ukutwala itself means that in other cultures, you went to stay together as a couple, and you agreed on that one, but you have not done all the rituals, that ukutwala from our side. But this one we are talking about is child marriages, arranged marriages, and abduction. So we have agreed as traditional leaders that let's deal with those issues which are there, Goal 4, and take Goal 6, which talks about leadership, and lead on those discussions. Program director, coming to closer. We have picked up some issues here. Poverty, hunger, unemployment. Yes, the doctor has also raised other issues that lead to this. But also patriarchy. And sometimes children, as a girl child especially, is only seen, considered to only to go her places at Kwendini. And also long distances to schools and other services. Moral decay. Is milo as namathumba. Moral decay. Where you find a father, elala nomntwana wakhe, rape umntwana wakhe. Morals. Also, there are a lot of gaps in legislation we have picked up, but that one, that discussion is for another day. Drug and substance abuse. We have programs on these issues in different committees in the National House of Traditional Leaders and provincial houses of traditional leaders. There are not enough clear programs for children. We don't have enough programs. We are always abantwana sibabeka phansi kwabazali uba basithetha ngewomen so kufanele sibafake that azikho ezithi ezizezabantwana. Social development is encouraging us as traditional leaders to make sure that we have got early child development centers in each and every TC. Monitoring and evaluation of the programs, they are valid and Google. We don't monitor the programs. We don't monitor. Umfazi uzalela umnye. Umntwana wam ngowakho. Ngwanaka ki ngwana hao. Ke a leboga.
I saw umama, who have conceived a child, who understand, a pain that our children are going through. I'm so happy that the traditional leaders are on board. There's a lot that they are doing. We heard from Mama. Mama Siabelela, thank you very much. Let's continue with a good job. Together we can make a difference. Thanks. Without any further ado, let me call another critical stakeholders. I must say that families are the first defense of its members. But there are other critical stakeholders because families exist within communities. And therefore, your traditional leaders, when we grew up, when we started working, I was, as a social worker, I would know that when I get into a community, I will never get into a community without going to Ukosi. The point of entry is Kosi. To say, Kosi, I am here. That's how critical they are. They are the ears and the eyes of the people. The same as the religious sector. Every member of the community belongs to a religious they have got their own religious belief. They belong to a religious, they have affiliated to a religious, faith-based or a religious organization, I must say. That's the word that I was looking for. So they are very critical. So when we want to beat this pandemic, we really need to work with both the traditional leaders and the religious sector. And we must know that we are going to beat that. As I do that, I'm going to usher Professor Baba Jasi on the stage. Baba.
Program Director, I greet you, Comrade Minister, Umama Ungoskazi, Umhlawuli Nkosi, our UNICEF country representative, social development colleagues, my colleagues online, viewers at home, Neskim Sam Sonke, Abandwana, I greet you this morning. I'm not good in writing speeches, but I'm always led by the Holy Spirit. But this morning I just received notices from the Facebook that I must not try to come here and cover up crime or justify crime using the Holy Scriptures. They've requested me to be realistic as much as possible. I fully agree with my colleague in Vembe that there are pastors who are performing these rituals, killing innocent children, And I think that is high time that we make use of that report at national level. Program Director, I'm here to represent the following organizations: Faith-Based Child Protection Movement, Church Leaders Council of South Africa, Sanarela, the national network of religious leaders who are living and affected by HIV, the Pentecostal Bishops Council of South Africa, Men's Sector, Men's Parliament in particular, including Azal Healthcare. Umama Mhlawuli secele uxolo by issuing an apology as Amakhosi, and I think I must follow suit. As faith leaders, we really apologize for this mess we find ourselves in. We apologize. We knew, Professor Nduli, that some colleagues within the faith sector are corrupt and they are practicing these rituals, and we are apologizing to South Africans. We will make sure that these criminals are isolated and exposed. Not so long ago, we were requested by our government, especially Social Development and UNICEF, to intervene in our communities. And I must be honest with you, we did not know what to do. Because when it comes to fighting gender-based violence, you have to leave your pulpit and be on the streets. And some of us are trained to deliver the word of God in this pulpit. So we had to reach out to UNICEF, and some of our pastors were trained, including other faith-based organizations in Cape Town, about 70 pastors of faith leaders in Cape Town who were trained around issues of children. And we really appreciate UNICEF, because since then we went on engaging each other as faith leaders throughout the country. As we speak, we're busy finalizing a manual in partnership with faith-based child protection movement and UNICEF. We're finalizing a manual, a tool that can be used in different communities around the country, training faith leaders. Of course, in partnership with Takwaneri Ime Men's Movement. Minister and colleagues, as faith leaders, we commit ourselves that sizakusebenzisana, and we're behind you, Minister and colleagues, especially UNICEF and Social Development, Namakhosi. We are pledging this morning that we'll work together, but we must also acknowledge the damage. Some of our pastors recently appeared in courts, found guilty of killing children, raping children, and the Meglenda Unje with this collar. I'm so embarrassed. I'm so ashamed even to be called a pastor. Uguti, some of us misusing the word of God, going out there, misleading people, manipulating our communities, because sifuna kukhula mabandla through these rituals. We really apologize, but we'll make sure, as these organizations, including Council of Churches in provinces, we'll make sure that we don't protect criminals. We'll make sure that our churches are not used to protect criminals. We'll expose them. We know that some of these people are using religion, they are disguising using religion to manipulate innocent lives in our societies. Social Development, please, when we meet in that parliament with traditional leaders in a form of a men's parliament, we talk a lot about things that needs to be done, but when we leave that parliament, we don't even action one. And it's high time that we practice what we preach. We agreed as this country that we need to activate street champions throughout South Africa, where we make sure, even if it's 4 or 6 men, just to take care of our streets. And by doing so, we will know that in that house, there's something going on there every Fridays. So we need really partners to come and support us. We'll be going to traditional leaders, in conclusion, will be going to traditional leaders in all traditional authorities in a form of a traditional men's parliament. We need your support. We can't be having these talk shows all the time and implement nothing. Lastly, as bishops and archbishops, including apostles, we'll make sure that never, never again preside over child marriages in this country. And we'll go far as making sure that we don't ordain criminals who are coming to this country and disguise as pastors. Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. We'll continue to support this department. Thank you, Program Director.
Thank you, Baba Chess. That was very emotional. Hearing it coming from a father, it really touched me. I hope it also touched the nation here. We really want to thank you for standing for our children. We want to thank you for saying that not in our name. We want to thank you for saying that we as the religious sector will stand for the rights of our children and we will protect our children. But we also want to thank you that you did not end up there. You became part of the solution. You are part of quite a number of interventions and programs, and you are leading that. I was touched by the fact that you are also at the forefront of ensuring that you train the other religious leaders. We thank you, and we heard your call when you said that let's stop the talk show, but let's action out. Thank you very much. May I please also proceed and call Professor T. Ntuli, who is the Commission for the Promotion and Protection to Cultural, Religious, and Linguistic Communities' Rights. I wanted to get it right because in the beginning, I wanted to clarify that. Who's going to talk, on combating violence against children, in particular the child killings, the rape and abuse. Professor Ntuli, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. And through you, Chair, I would like to thank the Minister of Social Development for organizing this. The panelists who have given us a lot to think about and also to feel about. I come from a commission for the protection and promotion of the rights of cultural, religious, and linguistic communities. So that everything that affects our religion, our language, as well as our culture becomes our mandate. We work very closely with the House of Traditional Leaders because when we carry out issues like gender-based violence, customary marriages, the first people we go over to Abakosi together with Iziduna, and then we meet with the community itself to find out what the community itself feels about what is happening. For instance, we have to go to a community to find out about the issues of child rape, child murder, child abuse. Where does it fit, within the culture? Then we realize that our very cultures themselves are extremely compromised. And once the culture is compromised, then the family is the very first one to be affected by it. And once the family is, then members of the family are going to suffer. Hence, the children, that suffer. So, in our job, when we meet up with the communities, we ask them particular questions, how they answer those questions kind of culturally, and then ask them as to what do they see happening, right now. Are their cultures still alive or not? But now, what has happened now in terms of combating gender-based violence and violence against children, the issues of rape, we work with these communities and discover that Some of them have got kulumandoda, masculinity groups. Others have got the systems of amaqiza, where young women mentor younger girls or how to behave and to be protected. All of the protective means for the protection of our children are embedded in our cultures. That is why, therefore, it is important that this Chapter 9 institution, called the Commission with a long name, has to emphasize, culture at each and every stage that it does. So what happens then in a community? When a child is born in an indigenous African community, the umbilical cord does not stay in hospital. The umbilical cord stays attached to the child, and the child will crawl with that umbilical cord until it automatically falls. Where it falls, you pick up that umbilical cord, and a tree is planted to link the child, to the tree. And whoever sees the umbilical cord drop, that person is the luckiest, person who's going to be blessed by God and also blessed by the ancestors, because that person cares for children, has been watching the safety of that children. So we need society, therefore, to act like that person who watches the child as it learns to crawl, dragging its umbilical cord. That's what our commission role is. We also work very closely with the religious community, as well as the police. We have begun now that when we get into a community, police have become a very valuable source, for they deal with everything that we actually deal with from different perspectives, and then we are in a position to learn. In cases such as this, sometimes we also recommend some of the cases to go straight to the South African Human Rights Commission if it involves individuals. But our take is a broader culture, and that those individuals operate within that culture. So the speaker from the traditional house, who spoke very well, also brought up the issues of patriarchy. Patriarchy plays also a very significant role in this, and it has got to be combated in the same way as we are combating the issues of gender-based violence that have got no place in it. Our children are the future of our culture, our religion, our language. They are future of our spirits, they are future of our everything that which we are. That's why in the Bible they say, suffer the children to come to me, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. And then by killing actually the children, we are also tainting and destroying the very citadels of our belief systems. I thank you.
Antuli, thank you very much. I think you also emphasizing that we're just like a body and we cannot function without each other. You mentioned quite a number of stakeholders that you're working very closely with, of which without them you won't be able, to function. So I am happy that we all agree that for us to fight this monster, we need to work together. We need to collaborate. And thank you for shedding light, in terms of the areas that you have mentioned. Without any further ado, I will call, Minister talked about nothing about them without them. The children are here. The children are wounded, and we're going to hear from the children. We're having children who are going to talk. We've got Naledi Nkanyeza from World Vision, but she will be followed also by Nongeba Theodora Mhlaulu, who will be virtual, but also by Lindiwe Sibande who will also be virtual, and Laura Maleme, who will also be virtual. But we'll hear from Naledi. Naledi, the stage is yours, baby girl.
Good day, everyone. My name is Nkanyezi. I am from Orange Farm, and I'm here representing millions of South African kids who cannot dream, talk, or be happy. Not because they are not able to, but because people will not let them live. To us, violence is a normal that we do not like, and it is not life. We want a normal. We want to be children in a normal society. I do not know how adults look at violence. But for us children who experience it, who are affected by it, it is unfair and unacceptable. Killings of children is happening in different parts of South Africa, and this threatens the possibility of a bright future for us. It is a shame that this is still happening in the 21st century while South Africa has power to stop it. There are millions of South African kids deprived of their right to life, married at a very young age, trafficked and raped. We are tired of hoping the situation to change, but it is only getting worse. We celebrate 16 days of activism, Human Rights Day, Day of the African Child, Day of the Girl Child every year, but nothing is changing. Instead, the situation gets worse. What is it that we have done to deserve this? We are children, just like your own children, just as you were once a child. Honorable Minister, we are wondering, what crime have we committed? Is our crime being children? Is it the reason why we are forced to be adults in our childhood? We understand you have made efforts as government to change the situation, but we think much more needs to be done to end children's killings and other forms of violence targeted at children. Your decision to call us here today affects our future. We need more than hopes and promises on paper. We need action on a bigger scale. It is important that you take our lives more seriously by keeping your commitments as government and making investments in children as your top priorities. Children belong to the state, remember. At least the Bill of Rights in the Constitution says. We therefore today call on Government of South Africa to provide us with safe spaces to live, quality primary health care and education, as well as improved child protection systems. South Africa needs to change. It cannot change itself. It is me, it is you, it is all of us who have to bring that change. Let us become the first generation that decides to be the last to see violence against children. We say it takes the world, it takes all of us, it takes South Africa, and it takes me and you to end violence against children. I thank you.
What is it that we have done to deserve the crime? What crime have we committed? That's what he said. If I quote her verbatim, what crime have we committed? Is it being a child a crime? I think all of us must think about it. What crime have we committed? Is it being a child a crime? Let's stop the talk show and make sure that we action out. I will call Noneba Theodora Mhlauli, who is virtually, to also talk on behalf of other children.
Go ahead.
Okay. Good morning to the panel. Good morning, everybody. Good morning to the children that we have, and thank you, Ganyezi, for everything that you've just said. I completely agree with it. I'd like to give gratitude for my presence from the social development and the invitation received from the Take Back Clinic in Soweto, Protea North, especially by Faith Nkomo. Raising a child or children during these current challenges of GBV and violence against children in South Africa is a sad reality. I am a mother to two, and I am a mother to the village as a whole, because it takes a village to raise a child. I cannot just say, as Unongceba Mhlauli, I'm a mother to Untsigelelo Nonkanyezi Mhlauli. In South Africa, sexual orientation, religion, and environmental recognition, like the awareness, is not giving much platform as it should be. This, as a mother, seems to be a failure on its own, as it gives a child some entitlement of awareness that should always be given to the child. And I'll also touch on indaba ye poverty and neglect, abantwana being rejected by their parents, especially the fathers, and there are mothers that neglect their kids. This can try to be of significance when it comes to taking ownership or responsibility of their offsprings. This will immensely minimize the need of wanting to belong. This will minimize our kids being lured into monetary entitlement or to be acquisitive of money and materialistic items. The discipline and prohibition of physical punishment is that discipline corrects misbehavior, whereas corporal punishment is used to get rid, or it stops some certain behaviors, zabantwana. A certain behavior which can be could be ridden off, it's always influenced by the punishment, which this makes the violence be perpetuated. It motivates it, or it builds umntwana to become a bully of a child, even at school. As a corporal punishment, it perpetuates a community of young, ill-mannered beings. Yes, Tina sikhule ngayo, but at the times that we are, everything iba civilized. There's so much change taking place. Sikhule ngayo, but now our kids, corporal punishment perpetuates a community of ill-mannered beings who become so much bullies at school. And through this, violence iba so much, umntana ukhula ngeviolence, umntana abone ukuthi entitled to do izinto ezirong through violence. Uyabetha, uyaqhwaba when afuna imali or a pen instead of asking nicely and being polite. This is mirrored by the child from the upbringing as a unit. As I stated, it takes a village to raise a child or an individual at home. But umntana ujonga whatever we are doing as parents. Ndingumntana self, as I'm a young healer, I'm a young South African traditional healer, I'm still learning. Hence, I always reach out to social development, or I have to reach out to the neighbors to say, I can't be always correct. What is it that is wrong that I'm doing to my child? Should I be spanking the child? Should I be sparing the rod? And whereas there are certain things to do just to motivate umntwana, because it goes back to uthando, the foundation phase yomntwana. Uba is umntwana given so much love? Is umntwana heard? Make time to sit down umntwana and just listen, because this will bring the outcome of brutal killings and molestation, exploitation even by the family members, our uncles, our aunts. So I'm humbled and impressed that there are many campaigns that are put in place and to minimize the increase of GBV and violence as a whole in South Africa. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mama. Let me correct, it's not a child, it's a mother. It's representing the mother, Umzali, okhulisa umntwana. He's giving us some tips. We used to do things in a certain way that were acceptable during that time by the society. But now we have to ensure that we change the way we are doing things and the way we are raising our kids. Thank you very much for also ensuring that you give us the effects of the corporal punishment. What is it that we get, in future when we apply the corporal punishment? Thank you, Ma. I'm introducing the second child who is on video, virtual also, Lindiwe Zulu. Yes, Lindiwe.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lindiwe Zulu from Zulu. As a child, I've seen many things in life about abuse. It is hard to leave your home or stay in a place where you are always abused. We always live in fear. We are scared of what will happen next. We cannot even go out to jog or even go to town alone because we don't know if we are next. It is painful to see a child being abused. As we stay here at Uzelo, some of us were abused back at home. We sad to be away from our families, and it affects our studies and ultimately our school results. The rights we have as children are not a reality in our world. We always live in fear and anxiety. Any form of abuse, may it be physical, sexual, or psychological, is detrimental to the effective growth of children and will have a negative impact on a child's future relationship. We can never have a healthy relationship, especially with male figure. As children, we would like the government to have stricter policy and regulation regarding the conviction and perpetration. As children, we would like the government to have stricter policies and regulation regarding the conviction of perpetrators of gender-based violence. We have 51% of women who have experienced gender-based violence and 76% of men saying that they have perpetrated gender-based violence at one stage of their lives. The statistics are shocking and a true indication that we as children and women are by no means safe in South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our children live in fear. They are caged. They cannot be children. There is no safe place for them. We need to really make a reflection on ourselves. every one of us. It's really sad. What type of children are we raising? You can imagine a fearful child. You know, it really kills the self-esteem of a child, self-confidence. It's really scary. We really need to do something about it. It's not a joke. Let me call Olora Maleme to come in and address us.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Laura Maleme. I'm 17 years old. I come from Rustenburg, Northwest Province, but I currently staying at the Ramokhoji Children's Care Center. As per our topic today, my opinion is that the violence affects children in the following ways. Violence causes children to fall for the children we experience bullying. Children can also develop a low self-esteem. Children become a victim of children adoption and rape, and others are being killed by their perpetrators. Children may be left as orphans and live in poverty if parents are killed during crime. Children may develop anger when they witness violence in their homes. Sometimes children have to be separated from their family due to domestic violence, and that may cause stress and depression. Children may commit suicide or reduce to drug abuse and gangsterism. A solution for my government to create more education and awareness through the different media platforms about the impact of violence on children. The government may ensure that there are full-time social workers based in school to render therapy to children who are the victims of violence and education programs to those who develop violence behavior. To develop more critical activities, especially in disadvantaged communities, to help children avoid participating in criminal activities. Children request police to patrol parks, bus stops, and around school all the time. There must be a harsh sentence for criminals. I thank you.
Thank you, Laura. I think the children echo the same sentiment. This pandemic has got, effects on them. We wonder why we have so many children that are involved in drugs, that are exploring alcohol at an early stage and other, harmful substances. And we normally blame it on them, but we don't make a reflection on ourselves. They are calling on us, to protect them. They are calling on us to intensify our interventions, to create those safe environments for them, to create an enabling environment for them, to grow up as children. That will be the future of our country. We have concluded, the messaging on children. Now we will get into the two speakers. They will come, after each other. We've got the director of Teddy Bear Foundation and the CEO of World Vision South Africa. They'll be giving the message of support in terms of, interventions and services rendered to children and families. And these are our child protection organizations that we are working with. Dr. Shahida Omar, you are the first to start, and you will be followed by Mr. Bruce Laser. Mr. Bruce is with us here at the studio. Thank you.
Morning. I come with universal greetings to all through you, Program Director, Honorable Minister, representatives of UNICEF, and esteemed and valued colleagues at DSD. I would like to just start with, where does violence begin? Violence, we know, and as we experience, starts in the home, where young children are most at risk of physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, abandonment, and even murder, as has been discussed earlier and described, the horrific killings of children that we are witnessing on a daily basis. Understanding how patterns of violence change across the course of life enables us to adopt a proactive approach to violence prevention. So intervening early before patterns of violence become entrenched, we are busy working with prevention and intervention. And we know that the effects of violence extends into adulthood, where limited emotional support, substance abuse, and violence may compromise relationships and parenting abilities. It is therefore essential to intervene as early as possible to break that intergenerational cycle of violence. So what are we doing at the Teddy Bear Foundation, working in partnership with other NGOs, other community-based organizations, with DSD most certainly, who are, of course, one of the key supporters of reaching out in terms of intervention and prevention. We work on a level of primary prevention, and this is working with children, looking at building their self-esteem, and working with parents, looking at promoting positive forms of discipline. Then on the secondary prevention is ensuring the safety of the child, ensuring that the child has access to resources where there's an immediate response to violence, ensuring the safety and risk assessments and forward planning for the child. The tertiary prevention, which is short and long-term interventions where we're looking at reducing trauma and working with both victims and offenders, trying to disrupt that pattern of intergenerational violence. And we realize that working together rather than using the blame game, because often we're always resorting to blaming, naming, and shaming. We need to work together and actually use the same game. And collaboration in terms of harmonizing content. So working with best practice models and learning from each other is critical to support children and families across the lifespan. The one thing I think I want to just emphasize is that we are using at the Teddy Bear Foundation a child-centered and child-centric approach, hearing, as you've heard from the children, in the child's own words, in children's own voices, where they have a right to participate and ensure that they can express their views and that they are heard and that they are taken seriously, assists with violence prevention. I think just looking at our programs of what we've done, not only during COVID-19 2020, but something that we've learned lessons along the way is in terms of information dissemination, where leaflets have been distributed in the indigenous languages, community dialogues, using every platform, whether it's standing outside in a community, standing on taxi corners, using faith-based platforms. So these have been platforms where we've engaged people and looked at crime prevention dialogues, engaging both boys and men, not just working with the girl child and women, but working with boys and men and analyzing values and attitudes, looking at the social norms, the gendered norms, and transformation, where when one looks at stereotyping roles and responsibilities, whose role is it to wash dishes? Whose role is it to look after the child, or responsibilities? And of course, reflecting on that, but working with children from a very young and tender age, not just working with adults, because it is an ecological framework. So also going onto community radio stations, using visual media, where we've provided opportunities on YouTube, so your social media platforms, and providing promo material and having engagement with people on different platforms. So, and the programs at schools that we've been actively engaged with is the Safe Talks, where we look at rights and responsibilities, and again with children there, analyzing their values and attitudes, dispelling and debunking myths and misperceptions and conceptions, and of course, working with educators as well, where we're training educators to look out for child abuse and how to manage, how to report, but also to support and make an appropriate and timeous referral. And I think something that we've also been working with is our faith-based organizations, as I mentioned before, but also the healthcare facilities where visits are made to antenatal clinics and support is provided both to a pregnant mother on how best to take care, nurture herself, nurture the coming baby, and also access to resources and support facilities. So in general, I think the approach is a comprehensive approach. It's an integrated approach, but it's also, I think what we need to realize is that we need to work with each other, share with each other, exchange with each other. And something that I would like to end on is that silence is violence, and we have to break that silence. But we need to continue working in a coordinated fashion, not in silos and not fragmented. So working with government departments, working with other NGOs, other resources out there where we can then collectively make an impact. Thank you.
So, Honourable Minister, who's no longer here, but I'm sure will no doubt listen to this, to my fellow panellists, to the ladies and gentlemen that are here, but most importantly to the children that have spoken today, as well as the children that will hopefully see this on other platforms. This is about you. And I've just been sitting reflecting and looking at the title of this round table we're having and wondering how many of us have felt anger, have felt a lump in our throat, or maybe even tears in our eyes, that we are part of a community that has to have a round table to deal with child killings, rape, and child abuse. That is an unacceptable society to be in, and we need to be angry, and we need to use that anger to change the way we interact with society, with each other, how we call out the silence that our traditions, that our society, that our institutions put in place to stop us dealing with this. So this is a massive issue, and this is a complex issue, and it's a hard issue to solve, but solve it we must. The hard thing about hard things is that they're hard, and they require intellect, they require time, and they require feet on the ground. And that needs to be the output of today's roundtable. We need to make sure that we are getting real change. And thank you to the other speakers who've spoken about the fact that this can't just be about a talk shop. This cannot just be, the outcome of this cannot be a report or a spreadsheet. It has to be lives changed and lives saved. I love the fact that we are such a multifaceted group here today, because the solution to this is not in the hands of government. It's not in the hands of civil society or corporates or individuals. It's actually about all of us. So how do we work together to ensure that we all play our part? So yes, we've heard from government, and we know that laws are exceptionally important. We know that policies and institutions are really important to have in place. We know that the policing system is really important to catch and prosecute the perpetrators. But we need to solve this far, far sooner in the process. So we can't manage the consequence. We need to manage the behaviors of the people perpetrating the consequence. But you don't get to change those behaviors unless you get people to understand that they need to change their emotions. And you don't change the emotions unless you get into people's heads. So we have got to make sure that as individuals, as organizations, as governments, that we are talking to the hearts and the heads of everyone. And you know what's everyone's problem? This is everyone's problem because everyone is affected. Now, you might say, but I haven't been affected. You have been affected. How many potential Charlotte Mtrekes? How many potential Walter Sisulus? How many potential Ruth Firsts have we lost because lives have been cut short in their childhood? How many entrepreneurs, how many people who might have cured the disease we now face or cancer have we lost because they never got to experience the fullness of their childhood? I would say many. And because of that, we're worse off. So how do we solve this? What do we need to do? Well, we absolutely need to have discussions like this, but we also need to get into the trenches. We need field soldiers. We need people in the communities. And when we say communities, it's all communities. It's the middle-class suburbs just down the road here. It is the far-off communities in Limpopo and in Mpumalanga and the Eastern Cape. It's in Cape Town. It's in your neighborhood. It's probably, most likely, even in your neighboring properties. And we've got to create environments that expose it and environments that deal with it. So let me just take a minute to speak directly to men. So we know the facts. The facts tell us it's indisputable that most of these horrific events are caused by males. We've got to stand up. We've got to take a lead here and have the conversations. We've got to make sure that we can talk about these things and address it amongst our friendship circles, in our faith communities. We should not be afraid to call people out for inappropriate behavior or comments or sharing inappropriate content on our phones. We've got to take some responsibility here to change what is expected of us. Not expected by society, but expected of ourselves. And make sure we change that. So part of it is actually also real work on the ground. And what does this mean? So we can absolutely have training, and training is important, but we've actually got to do some stuff that matters. So we know we had a conversation a little while ago around broken families. And that's often a result of our past, which means that fathers and mothers have to move away from home for work. So what are we doing as civil society to say, how do we create jobs in the communities that need it so that the families in those communities can stay together? And that's what organizations like World Vision and other organizations, the many NGOs that work in this space do. Try to find solutions close to home that really impact, that make that change, that create opportunities for income generation, that create opportunities for great schools with great educators leading our learners through that process. There's very real, very tangible things that we need to do. But part of this, and this is such an interesting dilemma that we face here in the age of COVID, so much funding has been diverted from many initiatives and many communities to focus on COVID. And there's probably a good argument for that. But just because we have COVID, it doesn't take away from the very real fact that every day in our country, children are being raped and killed and abused. We have still got to direct funding and resources to that so that the job can be done to save those lives. So that the next Nelson Mandela will get the opportunity to come and lead our country. That today might be a small child in a community, but one day will be a fantastically educated, amazing statesman of this nation, boy or girl. So let's get off our seats. Let's get out of our talk shops and let's get onto the ground. Let's partner with whoever we need to partner to make the change that is so important. And there was an image here, I don't know if you caught it, but I loved it. It was in all three videos of the children, where there was a girl child talking, and behind her almost has two bodyguards, and in the one school on the screen, a whole lot of them, almost protecting this child. And we need to be this community that surrounds the child that's telling us the story of the reality of her life, of suffering from abuse, the threat of it, the unacceptable nature of it. That it's not just about an incident, but it's about a lifetime of dealing with the scars. How do we deal with that? We get a community around to protect and to make sure that it doesn't happen ever again. So I want to ask you as I wrap up now, how do you partner with people who can make a difference on the ground? There's so many ways that you can do with your time and with your money, but also with your conversations in your own home, with your own boys and girls, around how they need to change behavior. With your own husbands and wives, with your own communities and your workplace, how do you change behavior and make that statement that's on the wall here unacceptable in our lives and our nation? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Omar and Mr. Laser. You said it's a massive hard issue to resolve, but it must be resolved. Dr. Omar, you talked about the interventions that you are implementing. We need to see a time where your organization has now changed the priorities and no longer dealing with children who have been hurt, because we would have, all of us, eliminated that. We would have ensured that there are no children that are getting hurt. As one of the child has said, they must be the last generation, to get hurt. You said that it is important for us to note that it is not only government's responsibility. I'm happy that it's coming up from the partners, that all of us are involved. Even though that your child is not affected now, but he or she is your child. As we have been raised, that every child is your child. So in that saying, it means that we are all affected and we really need to pull up our socks. You mentioned a very critical issue to say that this should not just be another report, but we need to ensure that whatever comes out of here is a life change. I think we are all agreeing as stakeholders that as we continue with our conversation, because we need to talk, we need to make noise. We must continue with our conversations. We must continue to make a lot of noise. But as we do that, we need to ensure that, we equally invest time and resources on implementation. We owe it to our children. One of the children said that we really need to give them reports in terms of what is it that we are doing. They are tired of listening to us, calling them here to come and talk and to come and listen to us. It's now time for action. We're nearing towards the closure, as I call Ms. Maga to come and give us way forward and closure. And I hope when we meet in another platform, we'll be talking about how much progress we have made, and very significant progress in that regard. Thank you very much. I want to really also thank you, the panelists, for your availability, to thank the Minister in absentia for making time to come here, to also thank the members of the public, for availing themselves. Thank you very much. Ms. Maga.
Once again, thank you very much for this opportunity. And now my task is to come with the way forward. After the whole day or the whole morning's deliberations, what do we do? So I will just mention key areas, and at the end, we'll come with a plan, not now, later on. The first thing we need to do is to intensify a coordinated effort. Because this morning we could hear that it takes everybody to care and protect the children. And as we do that, we will be governed or guided by the INSPIRE strategies. And the other point, as DSD, we have 365 days plan of action for child protection. And we are focusing on NSP, GBV, GBVF, Pillar 2, which is prevention, Pillar 4, care, response, and healing. Now we have to put energy to do that, and throughout the year, make it a point that we implement this plan. And, you know, most of the time it was like violence started home. So we have to start now, strengthening capacity building in the family, community, then as stakeholders, as government, so that we can all be in a position to really address this scourge. And the other point, prevention, you know, it's better to prevent than to treat. So all stakeholders, let's now take our energy into prevention. And our children's voices are very important. As we come with all these interventions, we must be moving hand in glove, hand in hand with our children. And it's very true, we have to engage religious sectors, traditional leaders, you know, to educate them about this scourge and to assist them, you know, to implement the programs at their level before they can come to us experts. Because they are on the ground as our ears and our eyes. And most people who have trouble, most of the time, go to the religious leaders, go to the traditional leaders. So those people now must be empowered to deal with this scourge. As we do that, we will be now eliminating children going further into statutory services, which we don't want. And I have talked about capacity building, parents and everybody. And awareness and education is key. You know, we must not be, we shouldn't say we are done with education. It must be our daily, our weekly, our yearly, you know, methodology to deal with this scourge. And then after this, after today, DSD as the lead, we will sit down, now come to craft intervention plans, being informed by the information we had today, then call all the role players, all the stakeholders, now to share the plan, because they must all buy in. DSD alone can't do it. And then after sharing that plan, we endorse the plan, and together now, we start implementing the plan. I want to stress that it takes the whole village to raise a child. Nobody alone can raise the child. Thank you very much.